sort of like, no, get in, sit down, shut up, and here we go.
Always bossy.
Oh, my no, can't believe that. And with guests as well. So, welcome. And now we've got Plaid again, because we had one gentleman from Plaid, Glenn, who was speaking, the other day.
He's one of our regulars.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Glenn
he is.
comes on quite often,
Yeah.
And Alfred Williams, you're a local person.
I am. Lived in the constituency most of my life, actually. Went to primary school in Abergele, and then with my parents working in the bank, so we moved to Llanrwst. But then my first job was actually the other end of the constituency in Cerrig-y-Drudion. Worked on a farm there. And then lived in Britain area most of my life, and now I'm a director of a mental health charity based in St Asaph.
So, Alfred, you're the Clwyd West candidate for Plaid.
Yeah.
How long have you been in Plaid?
Oh,
how long have you been a member?
Gosh, going back years and years and years. I probably since my 20s, early 20s. Been in and out of campaigning, working for Plaid, doing various things. Was a previous candidate going back about 20 years.
How are you?
Yes.
In Clwyd West?
In Clwyd West, back
okay.
in 2005 or whatever.
So you've always been quite political then?
I have, yes. And stood back from politics for a while because wanted to concentrate on my career and working
I
in
can
mental
understand
health
that it takes a lot of time, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. Politics is, people say, you got plenty of time, politicians. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of time.
It does, because I'm more of an activist. I'm not, I'm in a particular party, but I'm more of an activist. But either way, when you're involved in politics, it just takes up a lot of energies, a lot of time, doesn't it? Especially if you're passionate about that.
Yeah, but I'm also quite involved in community things in my local area as well. I'm the chair of our local community council in Llanrhaeadr. I'm also chair of a preservation society. We're redeveloping a Celtic well in Llanrhaeadr. So we've had a grant from the Heritage Lottery for 300 million. That's 300,000.
300 million? That's a well, it says, for 300,000.
That's into my head,
You're in the wrong place.
It is, yeah. So that's 300,000 still.
It's still significant.
Still
it's a significant amount of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I was just 300 million.
Well, it would be nice, yeah.
So your job, your role in the mental health services, what area of mental health does your... Is it a company or...
No, it's a charity.
Charity?
I run a charity. It's Conwy Denbighshire Mental Health Advocacy.
Are you a trustee there, or are you an officer? You're a director?
I'm a director of the charity, so I do the day-to-day operations of the charity.
Okay.
We have 19 wonderful staff. They're very committed to their job. We work as mental health advocates, so we're in the applets quite a lot, and other psychiatric units. We also have a mental capacity advocate, dealing with people really with dementia and Alzheimer's and really don't have a voice. And that's the whole concept of advocacy, is that you try to give that person a voice when they're in difficult circumstances.
They represent them legally as well, can't they? If they're a legal advocate, then they can
We're
represent...
not legal advocates, no,
advocates,
that's a different strand.
A different strand.
Yeah.
So do you work across the mental health spectrum, or are you mostly in Alzheimer's and dementia? Do you work in...
Cover the whole we work in the community, we work in general hospitals, we work in psychiatric units, so it's really across the whole area of mental health.
Addictions?
Go
into the addiction services?
Not so much as the addiction services.
Yeah. So, it's where my main interest is around addiction.
So you get paid by contracts to provide these services, mainly from the social services, is it mainly?
From health mainly we get.
Mainly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but some money also from local authorities.
Because they're interested in the Mental Health Act and how people are and how vulnerable they are, and making sure that the law is deemed to be done and seen to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what your business? How far does that pull out then into wider business? Have you ever been involved in other businesses?
I have. I did run a small preparing ready meals. Going back quite a few years, I had my own business doing that, and ran that for probably about 10 years, and I supplied over 50 shops across North Wales, including the Co-op and Asda. But due to personal reasons and a bit of a tragic background, I had to give up the business, and really that's why I went back to the third sector where I'd really done a lot of work. So I went back and started as a field officer for an advocacy project, and worked myself up to becoming a director of the company where I am, or a charity where I am now.
So you, and just to finish off yourself, chatting about yourself, because we'll talk about Plaid policy, won't we?
Yeah.
So you live in Clonrider,
Yeah.
and you have children that have been brought up
Daughters.
locally in Clwyd West, and you have any grandchildren? And
No,
not yet.
No, my
Not yet?
children. My eldest daughter's just started in university in Chester.
Okay.
My youngest is still in high school in Clwyd.
So they need a bit of a break first before they start on grandchildren.
Yeah, before they start the children
Yeah.
side, yeah. So, no, it's interesting to get an idea of who the candidates are, where they're from, where their background's from. So with Plaid policies now then, so I've been looking at the different priorities for Plaid. Obviously, the big one is the Remain. We've had a total contrast today, because we've had the Brexit candidate for Vale Clwyd with the Leave campaign. So the Remain campaign then, do you feel that Plaid Remain campaign is a difficult one in Wales because we did vote to leave?
It does have its challenges, but we have always been a European, well, we are now a European party and have been for a number of years. We feel that Wales benefits from being part of Europe. That is part of our core principles, and I think it would be wrong of us to turn around and say that we're now against that. We still believe in remaining in Europe. We will campaign to carry on staying in Europe, and that is part of our policy. You know, we think there's a huge benefit in being in Europe.
Okay. Do you believe in the fact that people, they said they wanted to leave Europe in Wales? Do you believe then that you should actually support that for them and be advocates for the people of Wales, rather than just making your own mind up that you want to stay?
No, I don't think we are making our own mind. We are listening to the people that support us and to people that I've met on the doorstep and on a day-to-day basis. Going back to the campaign itself, it was a myriad of different kind of leave ideas that was bandied around. Farage was saying at the time, we want a Norway deal. Now he's changed his mind and he wants a hard Brexit.
Just come out.
But the people said it doesn't really matter any of that faff because we voted to leave. End of.
We do still get people saying that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, and I get that on the doorstep as well, that people said, I voted to leave. But when you ask them, well, what kind of way did you want to leave? And says, no, I just wanted to leave. Well, yet that's the problem with the whole concept of that referendum. It wasn't clear how we left.
How do you feel?
But that was the vote that was put to the people. Stay or leave.
And I think it was totally wrong of David Cameron, because it was knee-jerk reaction by him to appease the Brexit party.
But you can't keep changing the question, surely.
I'm not saying we should be changing the question. It was, there was a leave, but on what basis are we leaving? And we are saying now we should go back to the people and have a confirmation vote on exactly why we should be leaving, if that's what people want.
What do you think then? Because I asked Peter, we've asked Peter about because my son was not older, he just missed the referendum vote, and he's not happy that he didn't get to vote whether his future was in or out of Europe. Do you speak to a lot of young ones? Because we're 3.5 years down the line, and I did say this is another thing we said to Peter. You know, these ones that have missed that opportunity. Have you spoken to people that age, and how do you feel that they feel about voting now?
Because I've been to quite a few schools to talk to pupils in schools, and the comments I'm getting is that they feel their future is what we're talking about. It's not about people who are in their 60s and 70s. It's the young people who are coming through. They want to see the future, and vast majority want to see a future in Europe,
Right,
being part of Europe, having the opportunities to travel there and to study in Europe, which, if we leave, will be denied to them.
Right, okay. I think Brexit is a big issue, but it's not the only issue.
True.
There's so many other issues that people are really messaging in about, aren't they?
Yes.
So we'll talk about
We'll
what
talk
people are
about
messaging
those.
in about after.
But one thing that strikes me about Plaid is they want to leave the rest of the UK. They want to be independent. Is that true?
Yep.
And can you afford to be?
Yep, we would like to see Wales as an independent country within Europe. There are 6 or 7 countries within Europe, Lithuania, Latvia, Cyprus, Malta, who are countries smaller than Europe, but are, at the top table. They're helping to make decisions in Europe, and we would like to be part of that. And also, we would think that it would benefit our economy. If I can just give one example. In 1999, when Welsh Assembly was formed, Lithuania and the Baltic countries, we can club them together, all 3 of those countries' economy was really, really small, about between 5 and 10 billion of their, the economy. Wales' economy at that time was 25 billion. Our economy today is between about 55 billion. They're catching us up. They are nearly passing us, their economy. In that same time period, being an independent country within Europe with a voice at the top table, their economy has grown, and that's what we would like to see for Wales.
And do you think you've got the experience? Because you've got small management experience, but have you got people, could you actually represent big business in the area? Have you got people in the party who could represent big business?
Yeah, we've got people from a diverse background, lots of them economists and people that have been working with big businesses and big organisations that are advising our party. So yes, we do believe that we have the experience to be able to run Wales as a successful country.
Has it been fully costed? Plaid, have they fully costed? I think this is something that we asked Glenn when he was in. And I believe that there's still research around how Wales would be fully costed independently, an economic model. So from your point of view, is there an economic model fully researched for independence?
Yeah, we have, we do have economists who do advise Plaid Cymru, and there's a lot of myths around that Wales is too small a country and that we can't afford to go it alone. When you start drilling down into these figures, this big difference between the tax raising that's happening in Wales and what is actual fact starts to become much, much smaller, because capital gains tax is not based on if you have a large company and they have factories in Wales, the capital gains tax isn't classed as a Wales tax, it's classed as a UK tax. So it's not counted in what people give out as figures for tax. But there's also other areas where there is a difference. People say, oh, would Wales have its own army? Well, yes, most countries our size would have our own army. But UK government allocate as part of the budget
defence
for
budget,
defence is 1.3 billion for Wales. But Ireland's budget for defence is 800 million, and that's about what it is the size for a budget for a country the size of Wales.
Okay, I can see that, and I have many questions about how you'd manage borders and all these sort of things in terms of the practicalities, and that would bother me a little. But if you didn't go for Welsh independence, no one suggested it would happen very, very quickly anyway. Scotland's having its own problems about even getting another vote. But the Barnett formula, whereby the amount of money that's agreed to come to Wales is an issue, and Plaid want this changed. How would you want it changed? What mechanism, what formula would you want it to be changed into?
Well, even the chap that devised the Barnett formula has now said that it is not fit for purpose. But we would allocate money on the deprivation, on rurality, on the way the country is formed, rather than at the moment as per head, as Barnett formula is, and that is.
So you'd reward areas that were poor with more money.
It's the European Objective 1 funding model, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you redistribute in the poorest areas then?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
To try and improve those areas so that you attract more businesses, but also the education standard for those areas, and also the health needs of those people.
So how do you think, just moving on quickly from that one then, you've got 4 representatives in Parliament as it stands, or before the election was called. How many, is it 36 candidates across
40,
Wales?
40.
I think there's 36 because the other 4 constituencies have actually been, you've moved aside for Lib Dems.
Yeah,
so I think there's 4 constituencies that you've moved aside for the Lib Dems. And a party or whatever they are, representatives from Glad have stood candidates in them constituencies, so that the Welsh have a option to vote for a Welsh option. Have you heard of Glad? I've never heard of them before until I did a little bit.
Glad is more of a right-wing party, because Plaid Cymru is a left or centre party, if you want to class, in
On
those
the
kind of
spectrum, we've been talking about this before.
Yeah. But Glad is more of a right wing, and
Basically a fallout within the party, is it?
No, it's not. It's people that I'm not sure if some of them were either Plaid members or not, but they've decided to form this party, and fine, it's up to you. Reasonably
for
new.
this period here, because what we said to Glenn was, why isn't Plaid standing in all constituencies so that the Welsh have a Welsh option? And it was to do with the Lib Dems and moving aside for the Lib Dems, and then all of a sudden Glad's come along because they say that there should be a Welsh representative in the area then.
Yeah, this coming together of the Liberals, the Greens and Plaid really is a one-off situation. It's not something I would foresee it's happening on every election. It's more to answer the fact regarding the Brexit question that we've got at the moment. So, Glad it's up to them to decide where they want to put candidates or not. But what we're saying is that we are standing aside in those seats so that people can vote for one particular candidate, to give a better opportunity for a Remain candidate
party, which people may agree or disagree with.
Yeah.
But Cardiff Central, just last on this particular issue about Glad, they've put somebody up in Cardiff Central, and I thought it quite strange that Plaid really weren't standing in Cardiff Central, which is our central area of Wales. It's the capital of Wales, and Plaid aren't standing in Cardiff Central. So the option that's been given to the voters there is Glad. How do you feel
Well,
about
it's not
Plaid
really
not
giving.
standing
Well,
in central? part
we
of
haven't
central?
come to an agreement with Glad. It's them. It's up to them to decide. We came into agreement with the Liberals and the Green. Actually, Glad are a Brexiteer type party. They're not a Remain party.
I don't know anything about
No,
it.
well, they haven't got many members. They've got very few members. They got, I'm not 100% sure what their constitutional makeup is or anything like that. But they are not a Remain party, and we haven't come to an agreement with them at all. So really, I'm not here to discuss.
No, that's fine. But in Cardiff
answer for them.
Central,
Yeah.
are you disappointed that Plaid hasn't got a representative in the capital?
No, we've made this agreement with the Liberals and Greens. Like I said, it's a one-off agreement for this election, and I would say when we're in 15 months' time, when we'll be looking at the Welsh Assembly elections, we'll have a candidate in Cardiff Central, and we'll be fighting to win that seat.
Okay. Just moving on to transport and borders. The border with the EU is Ireland in the middle of the North Sea at present, or just between as they come across to England. One of the things that always strikes me as a bit odd is a lot of the quickest route to the continent from Ireland is through Holyhead and then straight down the roads, using lots of fuel, lots of straight to Europe and straight round. How do you feel then about lots of lorries continuing to flow through our area, causing the environmental damage that it does, damage to roads, damage to people's lives as they go through?
I'm very much an environmentalist. I want to see us moving to a zero carbon emission in 2030, not 2050, like the Conservatives and Labour Party want, because I do see it as a huge problem. Unless we start tackling that now, we're going to have huge problems in the future. To go back to your questions, we do need to see how we can reduce transport systems, but also to make them greener. We do need to look at moving quickly on technology, on vehicles to reduce the emissions of, especially from diesel lorries, on diesel cars, and we need to put a lot more money into those kind of technologies that are being put in at the moment.
So the Plaid's policy around the climate change, they've got big policy around that. What would you say is the key policies around Plaid's climate crisis?
Well,
issue?
like I just mentioned, we need to be moving towards a zero carbon. We need to be looking more at renewable energies. Here is a classic example. In Cowan Bay, we need to be looking at a tidal lagoon for the bay here, and that would be not only help with the environment, it would create a lot of jobs. But I've been looking at the mapping of flood risks to the coastal areas here, and Kimmel Bay here and Tywyn are a huge flood risk.
Oh yeah.
And looking at in next 15 to 20 years, unless we start doing something, it is going to become a
I
risk.
spoke to the people who were talking here. They came to Kimmel Bay, spoke about flood risk, spoke about a tidal lagoon, and one of the things they did say was the amount of stone and material you'd have to move out there to dredge to actually fill would be so amazingly massive that its cost would be prohibitive, because you'd have to move such an immense amount of stone from quarries, get it out here, get it out, sunk it, and actually create this lagoon. How would you... They were saying it's not feasible. Why do you think it is feasible?
Well, the huge disappointment was that the Swansea Bay Lagoon wasn't developed, because that was going to be a test bed, and to develop the ideas and the technology. And what happens is technology is moving extremely quickly in this field, and we need to be looking at not only the environment but the job benefits, but also the lagoon would become a additional flood prevention
But they were saying it would be prohibitively costly. How do you expect to get all that material, all that stone, out of the quarries, out there? Because it's going to, I mean, I look at the lagoon and think, well, if you created that, it would take an awful lot of stone and materials. Is that the best use of money?
I think it's one, we need to be looking at these technologies and to be looking at that type of lagoon. There are other aspects of, technology we need to be looking at along the coast here as well, because we've got one of the, biggest tidal rise and falls within within
Kimmel
the
Bay
UK.
here has got something. Dr. Stuart Anderson, have you heard of Dr. Stuart Anderson? He wrote many in the 80s. I think he was writing reports on these tidal lagoons, and he wrote one on Kimmel Bay. He's a local councillor here, or was a local councillor and a local county councillor. So this has been talked about and researched for many years, hasn't it? It's not just something that has come about as an idea recently.
No, it hasn't, and I remember, the people talking about it 20 years ago. But we've got to reach a point where we are stop talking and making more action.
So it needs costing then, doesn't it? And that costing put into the public. Would that how Plaid maybe would plan on renewable energies? To say about the costings, because Paul's saying about the huge costs rather than using nuclear. And is that huge cost justified?
Yeah, we do need to be looking at costing models to make sure that these things are viable, but we need to look how long-term these projects would be in place as well, and mitigate the costs against the long-term aspects of these projects. Because I take your point to what you're saying about the tidal lagoons, but the lifespan of these, are we talking a long time of
how long
having but we need to be looking at different models. We have the capability here, we have the resources, we have the the tidal rise and fall within our coastal areas, and we need to be utilising them. At the moment, Wales is the 5th largest exporter of electricity. In the world. We are a huge exporter of energy, but we can do even more, and that would be benefits of jobs and money coming into Wales. And they are high-class jobs as well.
Okay, just moving on a little bit to health. Health is often a big problem in terms of getting services at present. One thing I did notice, a part of that is some very intricacies around blood and blood donations and that. And we need to make sure we've got enough blood going around the system, so to speak, to make sure it's well. What Plaid are saying is that they will relax certain emphasis on groups in the past who have been to be high risk, and they will allow that blood into the system. How will you manage that? Because we're just going through something from the 90s, 80s, 90s, where there was blood actually contaminating people, and lots of people had died from all of that. How are you going to manage those blood supplies, and how are you going to manage to make sure that it's safe for the people of Wales?
Science moves on and technology moves on, and how you can test bloods, and so you'd have to put a rigorous testing in place. But it doesn't mean that blood that number of years ago would have been regarded as not acceptable or wasn't allowed in the system can now be used.
Do we have enough
safely.
blood locally to satisfy the demand?
I think the blood donation is always an issue, and there are always shortages of.
So we'll be
blood.
buying it in from elsewhere.
I'm not. I'm not an expert in this field.
Okay,
so,
sorry.
I've got a number of other expertise, but blood donation and how that would be brought in and from where.
Yeah,
so there's no point me sitting here and
that's
and making claims which is,
No, that's fair enough.
So
Can I
it's just,
ask, what your personally in Plaid's policies, what would say be your top policies for yourself for Clwyd West?
Well, my background is mental health, and I've been working as a director of a mental health charity for the last 8 years now, but been in this field for quite a while, and I have seen the services available for people deteriorate over that period. We need to refocus on where the money is going, and we need to be looking more holistically across the age range of starting from young children all the way up to
The lifespan,
lifespan.
Yeah.
Because lots of issues start off when children are young, and we need to be putting more money into the community and into community services to change attitudes, to change lifestyles, and to help people to live a better life and healthier life. Because a lot of that is affected by, that affects mental health of people. And I see, a lot of young people now with anorexia, bulimia, self-harming, and we don't have the services here in North Wales.
What's Plaid's policy around mental health then for this manifesto now? Plaid's manifesto's out, isn't it?
Yes.
It came out, when did it come out?
The other day.
The other day,
Yeah.
didn't it? So one of within the manifesto is about mental health services or social care, or so what would be what's in Plaid's manifesto, shall we say, that would alleviate the mental health, the problem within the mental health services in North Wales?
Yeah, well, we see it as a priority to get more funding into the community, into mental health teams, and because and from personal experience, I have seen mental health teams really, really struggling. We also have issues with how many consultants we have in community teams and in the actual hospitals. We have so many locums now coming in, and they're short term. They're coming in. A patient will go and see them, and and they'll explain what their symptoms are, and what's the matter with them, and and they'll have a discussion, and they'll the consultant will prescribe certain medicines because of how they believe that person should be treated, and then before you know it, that consultant's gone.
They're gone.
And then you have
where are you going to get all these consultants from? Because at present there's jobs for consultants. I noticed Plaid are saying they'll put 350 million towards mental health servicing, including awareness. But is it not a problem that lots of health authorities around England and Wales have difficulties in recruiting such specialists? And how is Plaid going to actually change that?
And it's been an issue for a long time. We've been advocating for a long time that we need a medical school in Bangor that will train doctors and that will become consultants. So this isn't, a quick fix. It's not going to happen overnight. But when you do have a medical school within, say, Bangor, the doctors will come there. They will tend to stay in the area. When they're in college, they tend to, meet a partner. They like the area, and they will stay within that area. And we foresee that it's a win-win having locally trained doctors, but also the benefit is that they will remain in that area. Well, at the moment, they're trained over in Manchester, Liverpool, or down in Cardiff, and it's quite rare for doctors to be actually stationed or to come up to North Wales. Due to those reasons.
Yes, it's difficult to get people
Yeah.
around. And I suppose following that, and then we'll go on to some questions.
Yeah.
Immigration. Is it attractive for Wales? Do you want to ask immigrants to come to Wales?
Yes, we do, because we don't have enough skills or in certain areas, and we do need to have people coming in especially in the health service. We have lack of nurses available, lack of doctors. We do need to have them coming in, but we also need to train them as well.
So you'd be in favour of lots of immigrants coming into Wales?
We'd be in favour of some of them coming in. Yes, we need to attract doctors and nurses, and also, but we also need to, to train them and retain them here in Wales.
So could you do that by actually taking people who had no skills but were willing to learn and willing to be Welsh?
Anybody can be living and in Wales. We regard them. We want to be, welcoming to them. We are as a party and inclusive. In the out way we look, we are an internationalist party. We're not, closed to having people coming in from outside, and we would welcome people to come in to our country, but that will benefit.
Brilliant.
Wales.
Great. So I think going on to some of the questions that we've had coming in, an interesting one actually, because we asked Peter, and I'm not sure Peter was sort of said he was for or against with the fox hunting, did he?
No.
With the fox hunting.
He'd keep it as it was.
He'd keep it as
keep the law as it was.
He'd keep the law as it was. So, fox hunting. I know there is an idea around the Conservatives' idea of maybe repealing the legislation and allowing fox hunting again. Yourself or Plaid, have Plaid got a policy to around this, or personally, how do you feel?
Yeah, we have no plans whatever to support repealing of the fox hunting. We do recognise that farmers have the right to hunt foxes if they are a pest on their land, but we have no wish to bring back fox hunting as it were with packs of dogs and.
How about deer and hares and all the other animals?
No, we have no. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the quite interesting ones that's come up, isn't it? And I think again with the NHS, the massive issue for people, because people talk about Brexit and some people think Brexit's the main issue, but I'm not sure that it is necessarily with everyone. We do get questions in about the NHS and the policy for Plaid with the NHS in Wales. Do Plaid actually endorse what's going on in England, as in paying for prescriptions, withdrawing really away from the original Act of 1945, where it's free at point of need?
Yeah, we are still very much of the idea that that health service should be free at the point of service. We have no plans of bringing in, any paying for prescriptions, and we did support that when it came in as well.
Sorry, just on that, you have people paying for dental care, you have people paying for eye care. Would you change that so that they're all free?
We would be looking at having more dentists.
Would you have it free? Because a lot of people are not having their teeth checked because they just cannot afford to have the treatments and everything.
Eye tests,
At the moment, it's not within our plans, but what we would say is that we want to get more dentists on that would be providing NHS services, so it is free.
But it's not free. You've got to pay.
You pay, the NHS amount. So, but you have also a limited amount of NHS dentists available.
But that's because they're saying you don't pay them enough.
Well, they would say that.
Well, yes, but they're going
that
private. Would you force them to be contracted to the NHS?
No, we're not in a position to say that that they should be contracted to the NHS. But what we would want to try to encourage is more dentists to provide NHS services, which is yes, there is a small cost, but we would want
So it's not free at the point of entry.
Not for the dentist one, but the NHS.
But it's part of your health, isn't it?
Well, it is, but for me, there is a lot of other priorities at the moment that we need to be tackling first. That is important, but there is a lot more issues on the NHS at the moment, which needs our intention, like going back to what I was saying earlier, that we need to be funding much more community-based services to prevent, because at the moment our acute system is in huge crisis.
Oh, totally,
we are missing a lot of the targets that have been set, for A&E.
Have you met any targets? That's a question. More of a question.
Well, we're not in the.
No, not you personally. I'm thinking of the health board locally.
They haven't met any of the. They're missing them by a long shot.
Yes, that's my concern.
Yeah, and it's a huge concern of mine. That for A&Es, the target is 95% to be seen within 4 hours, and it's been missed by a long ways. About 70% are seen with that timescale. There are other targets. There's 3 or 4 other targets, and all of them have been missed by 15-20%. And it's.
Do you think there's been a lack of resources put into the NHS UK-wide? Because we're talking about Westminster, aren't we? And we have to, because we could talk about the Welsh Assembly Government. To me, that's about AM elections. The Westminster elections is about how Plaid can influence in Westminster where the austerity measures have been concerned. They've hit Wales very, very badly. The NHS in Wales is suffering because of the Bartlett, the way that money's distributed. So we do need to talk about how Plaid can represent Wales in Westminster.
Yeah.
So for yourself, how can that happen? How can you, if you were elected, represent your constituency?
Well, we've always said as Plaid, the more MPs we have, the stronger our voice. If you look at Scotland, if you were going back, 10, 15 years ago, Scotland wasn't really that high up on the agenda. It's only since the SNP have, surged in the number of MPs they have, and their voice is being heard very strongly in Westminster. They had 35 MPs last time. And that's, and on most of the manifestos or whatever of the main parties, Scotland is talked about a lot. Wales isn't. And that is mainly because Wales has been taken for granted by the Conservatives and Labour over years and years and years. And what we're saying as a Plaid is the more MPs you send back to Westminster of Plaid MPs, the stronger our voices and the more we'll be heard. We will be able to get much more better funding into Wales. And
how are you going to do that, though? How are you going to do that? So, obviously, with Plaid, they can't get a majority in the UK government.
No.
But so they'd have to work with somebody within the Westminster government. Which parties would you be willing to work with?
We will be taking things on an issue-by-issue basis. If we believe that issue will benefit Wales, we will support it and look at, what benefits those issues would bring to Wales. So, if the next government is a Labour one, we'll be working with Labour, and we would probably see, more things in common to a certain extent with Labour and things that we think that would benefit Wales. But if the Conservatives are there, we're not going to support them in government. But if they bring issues forward which we feel we can influence and we can bring better funding and better support to Wales, we would look at it. I'm not saying we would support it.
In the last 10 years nearly now of governments, Conservative governments, is there any policy that particularly stands out where you think Plaid may have been able to work with the Conservative government that would have benefited Wales?
I do struggle to think of any policy that that the Conservatives have brought forward that we would support. But we did. We never say never. We wouldn't say we wouldn't look at any issues. But I am really struggling, especially with the Conservative governments that have been in power over the last 3-5 years, especially.
Okay, just questions from what we said. Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes, and we'll give you some time at the end to sort of say a bit. But one question is about poverty, about universal credit. What would you do to change all of that as Plaid?
Yeah, we don't agree with universal credit, but if it's not going to be changed, then we want to see the payments coming straight away, because what I've seen as a director of a mental health charity is the huge issues and the huge problems that is causing people. The fact that they have to wait, 6 weeks, sometimes even more. We've had some cases where there's been huge issues which have caused undue hardship for people, and especially for somebody suffering from a mental health issue, has caused some of them to, to actually have to go back into hospital for treatment because they are struggling to go out there. And it does make me so angry the way that the Conservative Party have brought universal credit out and have not thought through the implications for people that have to wait.
The reality of this waiting time is it saves the government an awful lot of money, doesn't it?
Because they don't actually get that money back.
Because you don't get it back.
Say it's 5 or 6 weeks. There's, you can't. They don't pay you back pay to that. I think you've got to get a loan.
So
Yes.
where will you
Cover
get that money
yeah.
from? Where will you put that money into? Where would you take it out of the current system, or would you tax people more, or how would you make that money up?
At the moment, the interest rates worldwide is extremely low. It is the best time for governments to be borrowing, to invest in their countries, but to be investing in people. So we do need to be looking at how we borrow money to pay for services, and because austerity has been going on for 10 years, and it is not getting any better, and I don't see it actually. Even though the Conservatives are promising a lot of things, when you actually look at their manifesto, it's not a lot of things that they're going to improve after this general election if they're the ones that win. And it does really worry me, what is actually going to change if a Conservative government comes in.
Right, and I suppose a number of questions have come around this same issue in terms of where does the money come from? And again, that sort of follows in there. I understand that your feelings about the past, about the Conservative government and others and austerity, but in many ways, the people of Wales voted for austerity like everyone else by putting the government into power. So
well, I wouldn't say that Wales we haven't voted for a Conservative Party. I'm struggling to think, have we ever voted for a Conservative Party? But we do think...
Not that I'm aware of.
No,
No,
we do
enough.
tend to have a Conservative Party in the UK, government in the UK. So, in Wales, we haven't actually voted for austerity.
No.
But,
But we got it.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
And, they are looking at, they're looking
And
at...
Brexit.
and Brexit. But HS2, which is I think is going to be a huge white elephant. It's not going to benefit Wales. Economists have said that there is not going to be any benefits for Wales. If something is going to have a negative impact, because it will be sucking in jobs and industry into that corridor. That's over 50 billion. I think it's actually going up to something like 70 billion.
Is it that project, or is it still ongoing?
Oh, it's still ongoing.
No,
Yeah,
I thought
there was
there was a bit
talk
of a
about
stagnation on it,
I
wasn't
think
there?
that was a bit of a trying to hide it for a little bit.
Right.
And not
Okay.
make it. But you're talking about 50 billion going into that project, and I think for us, and
A lot of
I
money.
imply, I think that money would be better spent on people in poverty, in people that need better health service, and better education, and that's where our priorities would be.
Okay, so finishing off,
Yeah.
why should people vote for you? Your bit to say to the people, why should people vote for you?
Well,
You're on the spot.
Yes, I'm on the spot, so yes. Well, I am a local person, and I am passionate about the area where I live in. I want to see improvements, because I have been, I am working in mental health. I want to see huge improvements in mental health services in North Wales and in Clwyd West. I am extremely worried about the environmental impact of global warming and the effects of the rising temperatures and sea levels, and I want to be looking at targeting those. We need to have better infrastructure, railway lines. You know, we have 10% of the railway infrastructure here in Wales, but only 1% of the investment. I want to see more investment, and that would help as well in environmental impact, taking more cars off the roads and helping people travel around better. So those are, you know, some of my main pledges that I would be fighting for. You know, there are, you know, the wider aspect of the NHS and education. We need to see more funding coming into Wales. But we also want to see Wales having more of a priority in the future on investors in industry, in jobs, in our economy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we'll be back tomorrow with a couple of more
this is an
candidates.
extra show, so we normally just go on a Tuesday, don't we?
But following us, there'll be Gary Carr.
Who have we got tomorrow?